Hey YouTube, what's up? Jerome here again. Want to talk about the CAGED system. I've been learning the CAGED system and I'm trying to memorize the notes across the neck. I've been practicing there the A minor pentatonic and the G major scale. But I've been trying to learn the five patterns of the pentatonic and the five patterns of the major scale. And I wanted to talk about the link between the five patterns and the CAGED system because I don't see this talked about enough on the internet. So I thought I'd just record my understanding of it as it stands today. So for this, we can go back to some just pen and paper, back to old school, low tech solutions. I don't know how well this shows up. Upside down, I take it. No. Let's see. Yes, I am. Let's do. There we go. All right, so we got some fret paper. You can print off anything. Fret paper is. I've been using this pretty heavily now to memorize the notes in the neck and to learn scale patterns. So once I know a pattern, I'll write it down here for easy reference. So this will come in handy. So if you can, print it off. If you're interested, print off some blank fret paper. Have it handy. It's good for solidifying in your mind the patterns. There's something about actually physically writing things down that helps. Instead of printing off the actual patterns, write the patterns down yourself. So that's one piece of advice. Have this blank fretboard paper handy. Another thing I've done, this is ultimately what I want to commit to memory. So I went ahead and printed off all the notes on the neck up to the 24th fret. At the 12th fret it all repeats. We want to be able to memorize this. To learn all the scales, it's good to know where all the notes are. So eventually, if you want to improvise, you're going to need to know where all the notes are in the neck. So as part of your learning, this is a good thing to have. So I have this as reference. But try not to reference this as much. I should know, as you get better, you should be able to know this by heart. One thing that I've been doing is memorizing the notes at the dots. So at the 3rd, 5, 7, 9, and 12. And just knowing what all the notes are at all those positions. And then from there, you can figure out the rest. And then you can memorize the notes in the 6th and the 5th strings. And then you can piece in the rest. So that's one tip. So far, in the opening there, I played A minor pentatonic up and down a couple times. And I played the G major scale. And then I played the G major scale in thirds. And I mentioned earlier about the CAGED system. And the CAGED, there's 5 patterns for the major scale. There's 5 patterns for the minor pentatonic. They're all those 5. The reason why there's 5 patterns is because there's 5 shapes, and they come from the CAGED system, which we'll talk about in a second. I'll dumb it down. We don't need. It doesn't is way more complicated than it needs to be. So to start, remember I mentioned the fret paper. Write down where all the C notes are to on fretboard paper, and you get a pattern that looks like this. So where all the C notes are. There's a C note, 2nd string, 1st fret, and then there's a C note, 5th string, 3rd fret. So that's notes on the 2nd string and the 5th string 2 frets apart. We call that pattern 1. Then there's a note on the actual 3rd string. Then there's roots on the 1st and 6th. Then there's roots on the 4th, and there's roots on the 2nd. And this pattern repeats. So in the C major scale, so we got first fret, 2nd string, 5th fret, 5th string, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 3rd string, and then we've got 8th fret, 1st and 6th strings, 10th 10th fret, 4th string, and 13th fret, 2nd string. And the pattern repeats. So 2 and... Oh, I'm looking the wrong way. So 2 and 5, 5 and 3, 3, 1 and 6, 1, 6, 4, and 4 and 2. That's they're going to shift across the neck for each note, but this pattern remains the same. So the first scale shape is 2 and roots on the 2nd and 5th string. The second scale shape is roots on the 5th and the 3rd. The third scale shape is roots on the 3rd, 1st, and 6th. The fourth shape is roots on the 1st, 6th, and 4th. And the 5th is roots on the 4th and the 2nd string. And then the distance apart it starts 2, 2, 3. So 2 between the 2 and the 5, 2 between the 5 and the 3, 3 between the 4, 1, and 6, 2 between the 1, 6, and 4, and 3 between the 4 and the 2. So 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3. You can see that pattern if you write it out clear as day. So this pattern repeats for all notes across the neck, and this thing repeats. So at the very end here, this pattern, we're back to 2, so the next one will be 5, and it continues on. The CAGED system comes in because the first shape here was the first one I point out here is I say it in C because this is the you'll know this is the C chord. So if I were to play a C chord, the roots are the 2nd and the 5th strings. If you play so that's a C shape. And then the CAGED system is if I wanted to play a C up the neck, then I could play it between these two, but I would play a D shape, an A shape, and then for these two, I will play a G shape. For these, I'd play an E shape, and I'd play a D shape here, and all those positions would be a C. I'm not so concerned about the actual shapes themselves. We're going to focus on where the roots are and how to build the scales of these. So let's look at... So here's what it looks like if I do that. For C, I've got D, E, F, G, and A. It's the same pattern, but the patterns are just shifted because of where the notes are. So this CAGED system is just overlaid on the fretboard in all the positions that makes up the whole fretboard. So learning the CAGED system, if you want to learn the notes on a fretboard, the CAGED system is one system for learning all the notes, other than straight up memorizing every position. Those 5 root shapes, 2, 5, 5, 3, 3, 3, 1, 6, 1, 6, 4, 4, 2. They'll help you with the octave shapes and figuring out, given one note, where the next note is. So what I did, so here's where this comes back. Where this is useful. Let's go back to the original C shape. So we're back to here. So 2 and 5 is pattern 1. 5 and 3 is pattern 2. 3, 1, and 6 is pattern 3. 1, 6, and 4 is pattern 4. 4 and 2 is pattern 5. So all the 5 scale shapes from the minor pentatonic and from the major scale are determined by these scale shapes. So there will be a shape, there will be a scale to play based off of what notes you're playing. So from what I can tell, say if you're playing this note here, you're playing in C and you're in this position here, you're in 3rd position and you want to play a C major scale. Then if you're in 3rd position, then you probably want to use this, the 5 and the 3. So you look up, you need to know what pattern exists for the 5 and the 3. So the position you're in and what string you're on, where the root is to you're looking to play, that determines the pattern. So let's take here I've written down A minor pentatonic across the neck. Here's it. here's your classic box 1 pattern is what it's called. And in box 1 pattern, the roots are on the 1, 6, and 4. Roots on the 1st, 6th, and 4th string. So in the CAGED system, this would technically be pattern, I don't know. This would be pattern 4, the E shape. This would be pattern 4. But it's called pattern 1 in the pentatonic. And so if you know the scale shapes, and I know if I got, so how do you know what pattern this is? So you look at where are the roots. Roots on 1, 6, and 4. And that's the pattern that goes at 1, 6, and 4. So the box 1 pattern, the thing to take away from the box 1 pattern is where are the roots. So that's why it's important to know the roots in all the scales. Because you know from the roots tell you what pattern to use. So if we're going to play that on a guitar. Then we're in 5th position. The roots are on the 6th string. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. Back to A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and back to the root. Back to the root on the 6th string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. Root on the 4th string. Root on the 6th string. So root on the 6. Root on the 4. Root on the 1. So, and most people refer to this as pattern 1. But in the CAGED system, that is pattern 4. Pattern 4 because it's roots on the actual 1st, 6th, and 4th strings. We call that pattern 4. The pattern names really don't matter. You really care about where the roots are to. So determining where the roots are to determines what pattern to play. So let's go through. So So we'll go back through this. We played this pattern here. This is pattern 1. Doesn't really matter what they're called. But let's go through to show how this works. Let's go to this pattern here, which is what pattern is this one? So this is roots on the 1st, 6th, and 3rd string. So it's 3, 1, and 6, which is pattern 3. That's pattern 3 of this guy. So here. So we're on 3, 1, and 6. So we're playing in the CAGED system. This would be pattern 3. And in the root, and in pattern 3, the root is under your pinky. So root is there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And then root into 1. So root into 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. Root into 3. 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, and then root into 1. So that is. So that's pattern 3 of the CAGED system. Doesn't really matter what pattern we call it. What we care about is where are the roots when we're playing it. So if the root is on the 6th string, and we know there's a root on the 3rd string, then we play this pattern, this shape. Oh, I got that wrong. So that was roots. So that's it was the A minor pentatonic in 2nd position with roots on the 3rd, 3rd string, 5th string, 5th fret, 1st and 6th strings. So in the CAGED system, that's pattern 3. So if I move up, the next one is at position 5, and then that's pattern 4 of the CAGED shape. Although technically it's called pattern 1. Everybody calls it pattern 1. So pattern 4 in a CAGED system has a root and a 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a root on the 4, and then a root on the 1. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, root on the 4, root on the 6. And that's pattern 4. And then pattern 5 is, we'll play it in 7th position for A minor pentatonic. And then in pattern 5, the root is on the 4. So Justin Guitar would say to always start on a root. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Root on the 2. So there's a root on the 2nd. Root on the 4, and then another root on the 4. So pattern 5 is roots on the 4 and a 2 in the CAGED. So that's pattern 5, and now we're back to pattern 1 in the CAGED system, which is roots on the 2 and the 5. And then that one is, which is this one. They're almost together. They're almost 2 frets apart, except for 2 notes. But in this case, roots are on 2 and the 5. So if roots are on the 2 and the 5, it's pattern 1 of the CAGED system. And in that one, we just play. So root is on the 5, which is A string, 12th fret. So we did roots on, so in first position the roots were on 2 and 5. 2 and 5, and then it was on, in first position roots were on the third, 1st, and 6th. In 5th position their roots were on the 1st, 6th, and 4th. in 7th position, the roots were on the 4, and the 2. And in position 10, the roots are on 2 and 5. And then we're left with pattern roots on the 5 and the 3, which is pattern 2 of the CAGED system, which is this one. This is the last one, right? The second last one from the bottom, because then it repeats. If you can see that. But you can look up those shapes. The key takeaway from the shapes are determined by where the roots are. So you need to know where the roots are. So in this case, we're starting on the 12th fret. So it's 12, 14. Root on the 3. The patterns don't make the name of the pattern doesn't matter much. What matters is, given a pattern, the pattern corresponds to where the roots are to in the CAGED system. So if you want to understand how the patterns work, you really need to understand back to where we're to at the beginning. So the CAGED system, the 5 patterns of the CAGED system, roots on the 2, the 5, then the 5, the 3, 3, 1, 6, 1, 6, and 4, and then 4 back to 2. There are the 5 patterns of the CAGED system, and all the patterns correspond to those 5. All the patterns of the minor pentatonic, which I just showed here. If I could keep my paper. So when you're learning these shapes, the point is know where the roots are and map that back to the CAGED system. So the whole point is, if you wanted to play a G minor pentatonic, now what G do you want to play it on? The easy one is to play it at 3rd position, because in the 3rd position G is obviously on the 6th string. So then it's your typical box 1 pattern of pentatonic. But let's say we want to play G somewhere else. Well, where's the next G note? If that's G there, we know there's a root on the 4. So we just play, well, that was the one we just played. That's the roots on the 6, 1, and 4. But let's just say we wanted to play it 4 and 2. Say if I wanted to play it now in 5th, how would I play the minor pentatonic in 5th position for the G major? Okay, so I need to go find what pattern has roots on 4 and 2. What one has it on the 4 and the 2? Which is pattern 3. Where's my... No. So we're looking for roots on the 4 and the 2, which is actually pattern 5. Pattern 5 of the major scale is what we want. So pattern 5 of the CAGED system, sorry, which is 4 and 2, which is this one right here, which is the third one from the top. So roots on the 4 and the 2. So if I wanted to play it there, so if I wanted to play it, so we played it here, but I want to play it in, I want to play it in fifth. I want to play G major in 5th position. Then it'll be. So there's the G. 4th string, 5th fret is G. So. There's G major scale because I knew where the root, the root note that I was playing 4 and 2. So I look up the pattern. I need to know what pattern is depending on what note where I'm to on a fretboard. Where's the next? So if there's 4 and 2, so if I do this again, I'm in 5th position. There's G. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 2. Now I could play G major scale, 2nd string, 8th fret. So what pattern has roots 2nd string, 2nd and 5th string? Second and 5th string, which is this funky one right here. The one is almost 2 frets apart of 2 outliers. So I'm going to play it on here. So I'm going to start on the 9th fret. And then the G. So then the G is the 5th string, 10th fret. There's G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's G again. Point. So depending on what position you're playing, you pick the pattern that matches the root. So you need to correspond in your mind the 5 patterns, map the 5 patterns to the actual CAGED system. So so go look up the CAGED system or even print it out yourself. And then for all the 5 patterns of the pentatonic, figure out which shape corresponds to the root. So when you want to play a scale in a position, you need to know where the roots are, and the roots determine the pattern to play. Does that make sense? Took me a while to get to it. I'm still learning it. But this is the pattern. This is the process that I'm going to go through to learn the whole neck. I'm going to take. So my plan is take all the 7 A B C D E F G and play that all over the neck in minor pentatonics. So we covered off minor pentatonics. I'm not too worried about this. This is just a reference. You can look up the actual patterns anywhere you want. Keep in mind where the roots are in the pattern. And then you can also look up this, but it's just as easy to work that out for yourself where the roots are to. So 2, 5, 5, 3, 3, 1 and 6, 1, 6, 4, 4 and 2. So if you know that, then you can correspond patterns to the CAGED system. And I think that for me, that's where I get the most value from the CAGED system. Knowing how a C chord moves up the neck right now is of less value to me than knowing the roots. So the only reason I'm doing this is to be able to play in position a particular pentatonic scale. I guess same thing applies to the major scale. So I'll go through that quickly now. So we'll keep the scale shape handy. Oh, another thing you can do here's 8 at the bottom there on my fretboard paper. I printed out all the positions of A minor pentatonic across the neck. That one I don't. It's good as a handy reference, but I don't look at it that way. I don't look at the matrix uncoded. I typically look at the 5 patterns independent. But if you want to treat the fretboard as one continuous thing and not be boxed in, then you kind of just need to know this. But I think that will come in time. But I'm not worried about that yet. So now, for now, is me learning the 5 patterns, corresponding that with the cage shapes. So 2-5, 5-3, 3-1-6, 1-6-4, 4 and 2. So we'll hold on to that one. And then we can do the same thing with the major scales. So here's D major scale. You can go whatever your favorite site is for all the 5 patterns. The key takeaway for the patterns is, where are the roots? There are 5 major scale patterns. And again, they all correspond to the roots of the CAGED system. So depending on what position you're playing and where the roots are, that determines what major scale to use. So I'll play a couple here. So say if we wanted to play, we'll do D major scale. So say if I wanted to play D major scale, there's obviously D, 2nd string, 3rd fret, and then 4th string, 5th fret. So that's the shape. You move the C up too, and the D roots. So if I wanted to use those 2 to pick a pattern. Now I don't know what this pattern is, but it's this first one right here. I don't know how well that you can see it, but it doesn't matter. You can go look it up. Find the pattern where the roots are on the 2nd and the 5th string, and then you get this. So that's the root there. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root 1. So that's 1, 2. And then back down to the root on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. So, and then we can do same thing. So say that's 2 and 5. I can look up the pattern for 5 and 3. So now 5 and 3. There's 2 D notes. What pattern do I play here? So we can play that in 4th position. There's the root. No. Root. So that's it, and then you can do the same thing for all the patterns. So then you can plot it here. I plotted out D major scale across the whole fretboard. But again, you need to know the 5 shapes, but more importantly, where the roots are in the 5 shapes. And once you know where the roots are to in the 5 shapes, and you know the roots on the fretboard, then you can pick. So the CAGED system lets you know what pattern to play depending on what key you're in. So if you're in the key of C and you're in this position, then I would look up patterns where roots are on the 1-6, and then on this side it's on 1-6-4, and this side is 1-6 and 3. So then I can look up the corresponding pattern for those positions of the roots. So that's how I use the C major scale. Sorry. The CAGED system to learn the 5 positions of the minor pentatonic and the 5 positions of the major scale. Still a work in progress. That's my understanding of how the CAGED system works and how to play in position. So once you know this thing, once you know the CAGED system, where all the roots are to across the neck, then you pick the pattern that fits that. So you need to know the patterns by heart, and ultimately you'll know this by heart anyway, I guess. But that's how I'm going to start. I know the scale shapes from the CAGED system, and then only yesterday I wrote down by hand all the 5 scale shapes for the major scale, and the 5 major scale shapes for the minor pentatonic. And I've noted where the roots are, so when I'm practicing this thing, I'm corresponding to what pattern of the CAGED system, where the roots are in the CAGED system, to what pattern I need to play. And that's what my practice. I'm really very early beginnings. But let's go. I'll play through. To end it off, I'll play through the A minor pentatonic again. So we'll say. So the first A minor pentatonic, we'll play it in second position. And that's roots on the 3, 1, and 6. So this is actually pattern 3 of CAGED. Okay, so now we're playing position 5, roots on a 1, 6, 1, 6, and 4. So which is pattern 4 of the CAGED system. Root. 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 And now we'll play it in position 7, which is going to be pattern 5 of the CAGED system. I'm not sure what patterns they are normally known, but in the CAGED system, this would be pattern 5. Root. Root. Okay, so now we're going to play it position 10, which is roots on the 2nd and 5, which is pattern 1 of the CAGED system. Root. 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 And then we're going to play it in position 12, which is pattern 2. Because roots here are on the 5th, 5th and 3rd. So this will be pattern 2 of the CAGED system. So root, 5th string, 12th fret, open A, the A string. That's your octave of the A. A. Root. And that was pattern 2. So that's all 5 patterns, and you pick the pattern based off of the roots. That's my understanding of the CAGED system. So, might suggest just doing something basic like this. Print off some fret paper, plot out the C major scale or whatever scale you want. C is simple because it starts off in the first fret. You could do D, you could do whatever one you want. C is easy. That shows the pattern pretty clearly. And then remember is 2, 5, 5, 3, 3, 1, 6, 1, 6, 4, and 4, 2, and then the pattern repeats. So that's why there's 5 patterns. And then the thing to remember is what strings the roots are on. So given any string, so say if there's a root on the 5th string right here, for example, that means I could possibly play 2 patterns. I can play one up here or a pattern here. So for every root, there's possible two patterns to play, and you pick the one based on what position you're in. So if you're up at the 1st fret, you pick this one, but if you're on the 3rd fret, you pick this one. And so that's my understanding of the CAGED system and how the major and minor scales work across the neck. So landing at that. If you got any questions, let me know. Cheers. See you next time.